Let me invite Dr. West to join us at this time. He is Trinidadian and lives in Jamaica.
That's
And
correct.
yes, sir. Good night. Good night. Good night. We're so happy to have you, and
Yes.
we want to thank God for you, Philippa Davis, and for your organization in Jamaica,
H.
JCHS.
Yeah,
JCHS.
that's
Yes,
correct.
yes. And can you, first of all, welcome, and can you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Okay, good night. Good night. Can you hear me just from the technical aspect of things? Are you hearing me clearly?
Very clear, loud and
Okay.
clear. It's
All right,
beautiful.
fine. Fine. Because sometimes I find when you put on the earphones, people don't hear for various reasons. So it's good that you can
Yes,
hear me. Okay,
yes.
well, I am a Trinidadian. I did medicine in Jamaica. I came here to do medicine in Jamaica in 1976. I met a Jamaican lady, got married to her, but that's not the reason why I am in Jamaica, because I did go back to Trinidad and then I came up to Jamaica to do postgraduate work. The Jamaica Coalition for Healthy Society, we are Christian people, persons who pay attention to the impact of worldview. Your worldview is the lens through which you see the world. And we are firmly convinced as Christians that the biblical worldview, the worldview that says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, that the earth and the heavens were not always here, and that God created man and woman. People didn't come by evolution. We disagree with that. There's no one can cite a single instance of an organism arising by evolution. So we don't accept that as a fact. We start, our worldview start, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and also that God created man and woman, male and female, and that God is the basis for morality, and that laws must be rooted in sense and logic, and that the biblical worldview provides the basis for human rights, because in the biblical worldview, all human beings are made in the image of God. That is the basis for human rights, that all human beings, irrespective of who you are, etc., you are made in the image of God, and that is the basis for you having value and human rights. The other consideration for human rights is that behaviors must be consistent with design and purpose in the natural order of the universe for it to be a human right, or to be considered for being a human right. So if someone wants to drink coffee through their nostril, we don't consider that as a basis for human rights. We agree with Aristotle that law must be based on reason, free of passion. What we are seeing in Western democracies is law based on passion, absolutely free of reason, and which is why, for example, you are having the problem you are having in Barbados,
Mm.
because clearly, those people who are making that determination about the number of genders, quote unquote, are making law and public policy based on passion or desire, absolutely free of reason. So the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society is committed to defending the biblical worldview as the most sensible, the one that allows human flourishing, and challenges, and we challenge alternatives, which are really based on passion and not based on sense at all. So that's what we do in Jamaica.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work you've been doing there. And I know that Philippa, who was on our program, on Friday, she's also from your organization, an attorney,
Yeah.
because you're made up of doctors and attorneys primarily. Is that it?
No, no, not primarily, but there are doctors and attorneys. Doctors, my wife is a doctor, and there are other doctors in the organization, and attorneys, but there are persons who are business people, teachers, lecturers in tertiary institutions who are not medical doctors or attorneys.
Yes. Wow, that's powerful, and the fact that, I mean, for us in Barbados, we look at it and we say, wow, that's so awesome that you have such you have strong lawyers there who are, who are studying, and studying what is going on, and looking at what is wanting to come in to the country, and being able to push it away. Philippa Davis, she was actually on one of our mainstream media today, because they saw our
Okay.
program, and that's a good
Mhm.
thing. She was on Friday, and so they picked up on that, and brought her
Mhm.
to mainstream media on today, and she was very powerful on there as well. But before we go into the Samoa agreement, although I see the connection between what is happening in Barbados with Praise Academy, and what and the signing, Barbados agreeing, telling the people, yes, they signed the agreement. I see a connection there, but a Praise Academy in Jamaica, because there is a branch of Praise Academy in Jamaica. It was founded in Jamaica, and then the Praise Academy Barbados was started 20
Mhm.
I think it's 22 years ago here in Barbados. You know the work of Praise Academy. You know what happens there with Praise Academy in Jamaica, and when you heard of what happened with the theatrical piece in Barbados, that the piece was disqualified. What's your take on it in a general sense? I know you weren't there, but in your general sense, knowing the content of the piece, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's to be expected from the part that Barbados is taking. Barbados is clearly allowing the secular worldview to dominate its law and public policy and public sphere as well. And we know that when that happens, as in places like the United States or the United Kingdom and so on, the people who support the secular worldview, it usually manifests as support for a really nihilistic and anarchist approach to sex. What do I mean by that? That everything is permissible. People must be able to do whatever they want. They're not accountable to anyone, and not only to sex but to gender identity. That you can be a man and identify as a woman, or you can have as many as 100 different gender identities. And anyone who goes against that narrative is going to be cancelled, meaning that just as you at Praise Academy was cancelled in Barbados, you will not be allowed to say those things in public. You will be suppressed in various ways. Uh, there's an example, for example, I think I heard Philippa give this one of a Finnish member of parliament who simply disagreed with homosexuality and quoted biblical verses. You will expect that that sort of thing will not be tolerated in the public square. So more and more you will find that, and this is to be expected, that as Barbados allows the secular worldview to displace the biblical worldview as the basis for its laws and public policies, freedom of speech in Barbados with respect to things related to sex and gender identity will be suppressed. And that's why, like I said, that's why the Praise Academy, what they offered, was rejected, because you are not allowed to criticize those what the secular people support. You're going to be punished one way or the other. Praise Academy has been denied, their entry has been denied. They cannot perform it, and you will find that they're going to be pushing these things in schools, and if parents protest, the parents are going to be punished in some way, or the teachers are going to be punished in some way, because these things are totally intolerant of alternative position. So I'm not surprised about what happened in Praise Academy at all. We could have told Barbados that as long as you go that route, you will meet this sort of phenomena, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. You said it's going to get worse, and because and I'm thinking about that, because what was said in the piece is what a pastor would say on a pulpit. What a science teacher would teach in a school. And so I'm wondering, in terms of the church, because we have not had, As Praise Academy, I'm the artistic director for Praise Academy, and we've had one pastor actually who, after a week and so on, after it happened, probably near 2 weeks after it occurred, we heard from one pastor. And I called that pastor. We have not heard anything from the church community, etc., because somehow, Dr. West, there is a feeling that that's just for Praise Academy, that just for that institution. It has nothing to do with us, and we didn't. It's nothing to do with us. What would you say to the church concerning that approach?
Well, I must say that in Jamaica, the churches in Jamaica, in the main, have taken us to well, we in the our group, the Jamaica Coalition for Healthy Society, we had ongoing contact with the churches, letting them be aware of these issues. And our church leaders have responded in the main very, very, very well. They made it clear, for example, in 2014, there was a huge march in Halfway Tree, which is sort of like the middle of Kingston. There were maybe over 40,000 persons came out of that to make it clear to the government of the day that we were not going to accept this LGBTQ plus ideology, because it is an ideology. It is a political ideology, just as communism is a political ideology, and you should be free to accept it or reject it. But what has happened is that using the courts and activist judges and so on, it is being imposed on the society. But our church leaders have made it clear from the get-go that they want no part, they don't want this to be imposed on the children of Jamaica. And so, because the church actually is the largest constituency of voters in any island, in any Caribbean island, it is really the responsibility of the church to take a stand on this. And you would think that the church would take a stand in defense of the biblical worldview. It's disappointing that that doesn't seem to be the case in Barbados, but I must say, in Jamaica, we have good support from the church. Our church leaders make this point that they stand for the biblical worldview, and that this other worldview, this secular worldview, is nonsense. I mean, this thing about a man can become pregnant and have a baby and all this other thing. This is just straight nonsense. But the church has to take a stand so that the government is aware that there's a political price to pay for going this route. And if the church doesn't take that stand and make that point clear to the government that you will pay a political price if you go the route that men can be women and there are 100 genders and all these things, these people need to be treated sympathetically. They are psychologically and mentally ill. So we're not suggesting that you abuse them, but you don't go making law to consolidate nonsense. So, for example, I just give you examples. Like I said, suppose there's someone with a warped desire to drink hot coffee through their nostril. Now, you see the damage that would do to the individual. It would be foolish for a country to say, okay, we will now go and make law and public policy, and anybody who says you shouldn't drink hot coffee through your nostril, we will punish you. You will be cancelled. You are a hater. You are a bigot. And the government goes and make laws and make sure that everybody fall in line with that, which is what's happening in Western countries. But we in the Caribbean must resist that. And as I said, the church in Jamaica, fortunately, certainly is resisting that sort of thing.
Yeah, you made a statement about those that believe that there are over 100 genders and that a man can have a baby, and all these different things that they want to push. Now, you're a medical doctor, and you just said that we should treat them with kindness, but they have psychological issues. Now, would you now what I want to say is that we need to understand in Barbados that there is, based on what has happened to Praise Academy, what you just said, if you said that on a NIFCA stage, you would be disqualified, because our production did not even speak anything negatively that they would consider negative. We didn't label them. Somebody could say you're labeling them by calling them, that saying that they have a psychological issue. Of course, you're a doctor, and so you understand that, but I'm saying I want people to understand the seriousness of what has happened to Praise Academy.
Yeah, the fact is they do. You know what? This agenda, this LGBT agenda, is being pushed by significant players in the Caribbean. For example, University of the West Indies is probably the biggest LGBT advocate and lobby in the Caribbean. It is the University of the West Indies receives funding in part from George Soros's Open Society Foundation. George Soros is a billionaire, and well, if you pay the piper, you call the tune. So he actually funded a group in the Faculty of Law in the University of the West Indies, a group called URAP, which is University Rights Advocacy Project, to remove the Buggery law from a country in the Caribbean. And they sat and they thought about it, and they realized that Belize met the criteria in terms of the government, for example, would not challenge the removal of the Buggery law. So this is what they call strategic litigation. They sat down and planned it with funding from George Soros's um, Open Society Foundation, and they got the Buggery law removed from Belize. Okay, so this is the Faculty of Law of the University of the West Indies. Why is it important to get the Buggery law removed? Because the Buggery law is a line in the sand that says everything is not normal. There are some intimate behaviors that are abnormal. And you cannot build on LGBT ideology, which involves, same-sex marriage and punishing people who don't agree. You cannot start building laws. You cannot start, my goodness. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you. We're hearing you.
All right, right. You cannot start building laws to impose LGBTQ ideology on your society if you have a Buggery law, because the Buggery law says that is abnormal. So that's why you have to remove it. So the Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies took it upon itself to take funding from George Soros and do that in Belize. And you would notice that a number of Caribbean territories are having judges remove the Buggery law as well. And the whole purpose is to be able to consolidate LGBTQ ideology through the legal process. And that's why they are seeking to do it. This is funded as well, particularly the trans ideology. It's funded by billionaires. You're talking money, okay? And these billionaires fund universities, they fund lawyers, etc., to do this, because what they want to do is to impose the nonsense, and it is nonsense, of LGBTQ ideology on the population. Because people must understand, we live under the rule of law. Everyone is subject to the rule of law, as individuals and as institutions. So the church itself is subject to the rule of law. So if these organizations like the University of the West Indies, etc., and the various lawyers and activist judges who are all focused on imposing this ideology on the Caribbean people, if they are allowed to remove the Buggery law and construct these fake rights, because they are fake rights, they are rights based on passion, not based on any sense, and they are allowed to make these fake rights, they will force our countries to conform to what is essentially nonsense, but not just nonsense, but harmful. It should be noted, for example, that homosexuality was removed from the Psychiatric Association of the United States, a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. It was removed by a vote, okay? And it was done because there were homosexuals within the American Psychiatric Association and homosexuals outside who were marching, picketing, breaking up meetings of the American Psychiatric Association and forced their psychiatric association to remove homosexuality as an abnormality. And they declare eventually to make it, quote unquote, normal. But that is a foolish concept, because of all the billions of people who have been born on the earth, not one has come out of a homosexual union. So to make homosexuality normal and equate it to heterosexuality is nonsense. What we have are people with influence, as I say, in universities, like the University of the West Indies, people with money, billionaires like George Soros, and there are others who are pushing this agenda to impose what is really nonsense and bad for the society on the society. And there are activist judges, meaning judges who are willing to make rulings that are inconsistent with sense and even law in order to push this thing. So we have to be aware of that. We make that clear in Jamaica, and people in Barbados need to make it clear as well.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I mean, Mr. Franklin, he's talking about the University of the West Indies being partly funded by George Soros, and that is really the seat of this whole thing. I remember there was a policy that was sent out where we saw it in the newspaper, where at the university they were now saying that you needed to call people by their pronouns. We saw it here in Barbados. So it is something that this agenda, the doctor is saying is, Dr. West is saying that it is being really cradled or being pushed out through the University of the West Indies because of the funding that they're receiving from George Soros. And that is a very, very strong point that is being made here tonight. But I want to ask you this thing with Praise Academy, because it's bothering me. What has occurred, because you see what you Dr. West, since that has occurred, there was another ad that Watch Out My Children did about the child protection bill, and it was a drama about a mother complaining about her child coming to. In fact, let me play the ad. Let me just play this ad. Take a look at this ad. And this ad, Mr. Dr. West, was rejected by the newspaper that we sent it to. We wanted to do an online to pay for it to go online. So I'm going to play the ad for you so that you could just take a look at it and see what, because I'm not sure if Bajan's realizing what's going on. You know, I really am not sure. So just take a look at this ad, and then I'm not sure if Caswell has a question for you or so. Okay, just hang on. Just look at this ad.
What's this? What is this ignorance I see in front of me? I sent school my child so he could get a solid education. Lord knows he need it. He come home telling me he learned about gender and gender identity and how I, his mother, must call he by his correct pronouns. What? Because I don't believe in that ignorance. God created the man for how he should be. What pronouns he telling me about? Now he gonna get a lawyer for me. His mother get a lawyer to tell me like, cause he emotional abuse. And I could be labeled as a child abuser. What ignorance is this? What ignorance is this he bringing before me today? Because I want to raise my child in the right way and teaching the values of the Lord, I could get penalized for this. Father God, no. Barbados, watch out. This can't be for real.
But it could be. This can happen under the Child Protection Bill 2023. It could happen to you.
Or me. Grandfathers, fathers, uncles, brothers. It can happen to you.
It could be me.
It could be you.
Barbados, watch out.
This ad was sent to Barbados Today to be be a paid advertisement where we put money together. They created the ad, and they said they had to send it to I think their legal team, and they sent back and said we can't play the ad. Now this happened. That happened actually about 2 weeks after what happened with Praise Academy. But what is your take on it?
Well, first of all, what the people in the ad said is that absolutely true. It's what's coming to Barbados. if you do not prevent, the LGBTQ people and the activists and so on from, commandeering the heights of the society. They're going to shut down parents. They're going to send parents to jail. They are going to have these kids abused, mutilated because use puberty blockers, and that's a fact. It's happening in places like the United States and Canada. The argument that you're abusing children because they will become suicidal. That is what they use to push the agenda. Say, oh, you're not allowing the children to undergo gender transition, and they will commit suicide. Well, the fact is, studies that have been done in Sweden over about 30 years have shown that the suicide rate is not really affected by these various abuse and mutilation of the children that in terms of their gender transition. And in fact, in the UK and in Sweden, they are actually backing away from doing some of these, subjecting children to these mutilations in order to shift their gender. So yeah, the ad is absolutely correct. There, the Archbishop of Port of Spain, I can't remember his name now, but I saw a comment he made about the ACP-EU agreement, and he made the point. He said there's nothing more colonial than the LGBT agenda. It is an absolutely fascist and totalitarian agenda that seeks to suppress any speech that is against it. And that's what you are experiencing in Barbados. People are critiquing what is a clear plan and what is happening in places like the United States, Canada, etc. But you are not allowed to say so because these people are really they're like Marxists, they're like communists. You're not allowed to speak against them. And Barbadians will experience more and more of that sort of stuff. That's a fact.
Wow. Yeah, because when you see what has occurred there, only 2 weeks after. So this is, and I think pastors, hopefully that they will see it as a wake-up call. Is that a clip that is there, right? So that is Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon.
Right.
Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon. Yes.
Caswell, that speech, I think you should. I keep saying it should be shared as widely as possible. I think he covered a lot of good stuff. He recognizes this fascist, totalitarian, communist-like approach of the LGBT people who suppress speech, and he calls it out, and that's a fact. And like I say, that's what Barbados is experiencing at the moment.
Yes. Caswell, let me see if I can remove that and to see if we can get Caswell back in.
Yes, I'm
Mr.
here.
Franklin, he is a trade unionist and a former senator, and a very, very, I call him a man of God, because he stands up for what is truth and what is righteous. And you're listening to Mr. West. Is there any question or comment that you have for him?
Well, just comments, because I agree with everything that he said. I can't dispute anything that he's saying. And man, that is rare. I always find something to dispute. And so, but in this case, I can only agree. You see, and the problem here, like I will continue to say, we want to live above our means. So we want to achieve things with other people's money. But the old saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if you want our money, this is what you have to do. And I keep saying it's like prostitution. So you prostitute yourselves with other people's money, and this is what we're getting. They're destroying the morals of this country and Belize and all the others. And because this, I'm thinking Antigua, I think they've done it. The whole set of them. But they're for the sake of the almighty dollar. Because the dollar now has become almighty, as opposed to the creator becoming almighty. Being almighty, now the dollar takes precedence over everything else. And when you have godless people running our countries, this is what you will get. You have to say no sometimes. And we're suffering from that.
If I may say that With respect to the Buggery law, people always present the Buggery law as though you are interfering with what people do in private places, in their privacy. Nothing could be further from the truth. The issue of the Buggery law is not about what people do in private. It is about public policy and law in the public sphere. That's what it is about. The reason why, France, for example, removed its Buggery law, I think in 1781, somewhere along that, a long time ago. And life continued in France as normal, quote unquote. But the French had same-sex marriage just within the last 10 years or so. I can't remember the exact time. Because there has been a fundamental shift. The shift is that the so-called gay rights movement, with support again of universities, money, and business, want to change the very fabric of society. So whilst the French removed their Buggery law in 1781, there was no push to change the fabric of the society. What is a marriage? What you can say, what you cannot say. But because the LGBT political lobby, supported by universities and various politicians, wish to impose it on the society, and anybody who goes against it is punished. And not only will people be punished, but children must be taught it using what they call comprehensive sexuality education. And that is about teaching children that pornography and behaving in a nihilistic way, that you can have sex as you want, and anarchist, you're not accountable to anybody, your parents can't really tell you anything. That's where it's going. That's where these things are going. Because of that political lobby, it is important to retain your Buggery law. I know Barbados, a judge has removed the Buggery law recently, about a year or so ago. But in Jamaica, we have always been fully aware that that is the agenda. The agenda is not about what people do in the privacy of their bedroom. It is about what the society will be like, and what people, including parents, will be able to do in the public square. That is what this agenda is about. So we have determined that we're going to hold the line on it, because just as no one should impose communism on us as a society, we don't want anybody imposing this ideology on us through the courts or through any other way. The people must decide if they want to change it. If the people choose to embrace this ideology, well, we are democracy, so be it. But no one must impose it on the society, because it results in a radical change in the society. And you see, as I say, you are experiencing there are things that now you cannot say in Barbados. And if the church did not respond to it before those laws were changed, I'd be surprised if the church will respond when the laws are being changed now, and persecution and the prosecution are likely to follow.
So I want to pause you there, because I know you said it to me on the phone, and it was very sobering, because you're saying to me, Marcia, let's be real. If the church did not speak up before, what is going to cause them to speak up now? And because I was saying, probably if they're persecuted, probably if more of this starts to happen, they will speak up. You're thinking possibly the opposite.
Well, let me first of all acknowledge the good work of Faith Family, and I think something FFP in Barbados.
Yes.
That's Sister Veronica and her team. I could call some names, but when you start calling names, you run into problem because you forget. All right. So
Yes.
I acknowledge the good work that they have been doing for a long time. But I would be surprised if the church, which is lackadaisical and not interested when you're not persecuted, would come to the battle when persecution and prosecution start. I may be surprised, but I'll be surprised. I'll be pleasantly surprised if the church in Barbados does that. But I have a feeling that if you're not doing anything, when you're not persecuted, when persecution starts, you probably will just conform or fall away.
You see, Marcia,
Well,
you see, he's
yes.
made another good point. It is nothing about criminalizing what people do in the privacy of their room. Because if it was about that, the police will be knocking on your door to see what you're doing. Nobody goes and knock on your door to see what you're doing in your bedroom, because in order to prosecute a person for doing something like that, you got to be doing it in public. And I don't know of any people who go in public and practice that type of, but people call it sex. I refuse to call it sex, and sex. So, but if you do it in the public, it is a criminal offense, because you are because our laws are maybe Christian laws. You can't basically come for the Bible, and you cannot go there and do those things in public, because if you saw two people on the street having sex, I talk about real sex, not the nonsense we're talking about now, the police will hold them. So it's not about anything in your bedroom. It is about these people using any argument that they feel would work to convince people. I go down the body bedroom and they don't know if any policeman going to knock on your door and push it down. From the time you hear the police outside and you're doing anything, anyhow you will get up. So they can't come and find you doing anything in the privacy of your bedroom. There's foolishness. And this nonsense is going on, and people are using that argument. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. I don't want you to promote it among our children. And now, if you have two concerned adults in their bedroom, that's their business. I don't care. They will have one there to speak to the master, and he will determine if what they're doing is right, because I'm not their judge. But I will frown upon any person who try to impose this ideology on the people, and especially on the children.
Yeah. Someone says here the church needs to put Christ before party. There is no persecution of the church here because the church offends no one. And that's why Praise Academy is the one facing the music, because we teach the children based on science, and we teach the children based on the word of God. The church prefers to conform as opposed to confront. And this is what somebody watching is saying. Another person says here, I totally agree with you, Sean. The church has voted this government in office. That's why they cannot speak up now. They're too ashamed. This is what the people are saying. But I'm thinking about the Samoa agreement, and I said, these people in Jamaica, bold, man. They are bold. I read your article, and you talked about Jamaica not giving away its sovereignty, not selling its children. Would you say that Barbados signing this agreement, that if Barbados is sold its children to this agenda?
Absolutely. Article 47, I think 48, I don't have it in front of me. Speak 48, item 7, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's it. It speaks to that the parties must use comprehensive sexual education. That is comprehensive sexuality education. The reason why we took a stand against it in Barbados, in Jamaica, is because we saw how this would impact the children. The children are our future. And this is designed to make the children, as we say, with respect to sexual matters, nihilistic. Everything is permissible. You can do whatever you want. And anarchist, you really do not answer to anybody. That's the objective. And that fits in with, LGBTQ. That by definition is nihilistic and anarchist. It is everything that is permissible. You follow me? For the time being, they have not added certain things. But when people are now talking about minor attracted. Minor attracted is pedophilia. They change the name. Instead of saying that we support pedophilia, they're talking about minor attracted. Now, when will that come? We're not sure. But I think you could expect that is going to come. The children, anybody who signs this ACP-EU agreement is signing away their children's spirits and souls to the devil, literally, because it is about making abortion legal. Because if you live a nihilistic, and if you have a nihilistic and anarchist approach to sex, you will need to have abortion, because women will become pregnant, and you have to have abortion to facilitate that. Okay, so this is the secular worldview. We must realize that we are in a war with the secular worldview, people who say there is no God, okay, and the biblical worldview, which starts in the beginning God. And naturally, the secular people will want certain laws and public policy. And unfortunately, the church in Barbados seems to be conforming to those laws and public policies instead of being the salt and the light that should shine in the darkness, because that is really dark. That is affecting Barbados.
Yeah. The article that you mentioned is Article 48 of the Samoa Agreement.
Yeah.
And it talks about, I'm looking at it right here, it talks about comprehensive sexual and reproductive health information and education. And so Barbadians, if we're going to, our government, they have signed it and they are defending it. Why they've done it. And the funny thing about it, at least in Jamaica, you had some kind of debate. I heard that, that one of your persons were able to speak to, one of your young person brought it up, in a public setting.
In a town hall meeting where the prime minister was present. And again, I just want to show you that our umbrella group of churches, the Jamaica umbrella group of churches, brought it up with the prime minister, who asked the Minister of Foreign Affairs to address it. Now, we have to say that, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs keeps saying that, look, even though we signed this, it would not affect our laws. It would not affect our laws. But we kept saying, why not write a little amendment saying that these things do not apply to Jamaica? Because when you sign a document, you have to be careful. Once you sign it, there's a system where they say it should, certainly with UN treaties, it should be ratified by your parliament. But it's something that really doesn't work. Let me tell you why it doesn't work. In Barbados, for example, if you sign that document and you argue that it has to be ratified by your parliament, but your parliament has 30% of the seats, all the seats, so it's automatically going to be ratified. Similarly, if any government has the majority in the parliament. So if the government signs a treaty and they say it has to be ratified by the parliament, well, the government that signed the treaty has the majority to ratify it in the parliament. So that is clearly an inadequate system for dealing with things like this. And
so hold a minute. This is because I was there saying, Mr. Franklin, that we probably can push for it not to be ratified, but you raised, and that's why I tell you I like to talk to you, but at the same time, Dr. West, you sometimes just throw things at me. You're like Mr. Franklin. The question. So you're saying that because we have the government has all the seats in parliament, that basically it's already ratified. We can't wait on that because they're the ones that would ratify it. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and even if they didn't have all, they would have the majority. so it is pure tokenism to say that we signed this treaty, it must be ratified in the parliament when you have the majority in the parliament and you signed the treaty. It's going to be ratified. It's pure tokenism. It should be discussed with the people up front. Is there any value in an argument that we should sign? All right. And that we are nitpicking when we focus on the LGBT. The question is a little bit unusual. There is an argument to say that this should be trade and let us stick to trade. I certainly agree with that. In fact, and if you want to put other things, we must put things that protect our citizens. Okay? So our governments could have argued, I think there was a certain time limit when you could have said, we don't agree with this and it will be considered. But for some reason, our government, for example, didn't seem to see it or didn't care, or I don't know, we're not sure what. We're not nitpicking at all, because the LGBT ideology, transgender ideology, is an ideology that is pervasive. It's going to tell parents what to do. It destroys the lives of children. It destroys society. It is nonsensical because it equates what is normal with what is abnormal, and a society would not flourish with that being the case. So we are not nitpicking. This is real. And we are saying in Jamaica that we do not want this aspect of the thing because it imposes on the society, people who sign, a commitment to advance the LGBTQ ideology. And that goes all the way, as I said. So you see that ad that you put out that was banned? The ad is correct. There's going to come a time, as in the United States, for example, or in Canada, in which children would be transitioned by teachers and parents will not be informed. And if the parents seek to get information or seek to go against it, they may very well end up losing the children, meaning the children will be taken by the state. All of that sort of thing is part of the construct. This is an absolutely evil political agenda. It's a political agenda and it's absolutely evil. It's of course spiritual. I should say it's a spiritual agenda that is taking place through the political process. But it's absolutely evil. And the organization that should be standing against it is the church. The church, that is the church's responsibility to be salt and light in the world.
Look, to answer that question, I was going to answer it by saying, what does LGBT has to do with trade? If you're going to have a trade agreement, have a trade agreement. But this is much more than trade. You know, unless you're saying that you're going to trade in that type of behavior too, because again, that's called prostitution. You know what I mean? So we are trying to make prostitutes of our government and our people. You want money, so you got to bend over for it. That has nothing to do. LGBT has nothing to do with trade. It's trade agreement. I remember the first thing was Lome. Remember, and Lome dealt with. In Barbados, for us, it was sugar. I hope we get preferential treatment for our sugar in the European Union. That was all about. It didn't have anything to do with LGBTQ, nothing else. What happening now? We have people who are ungodly, who are trying to deliver us unto Satan. I think I sound like a preacher, but I'm not a preacher. They will use their money to get us there. And they will use our leaders, who they identify as having no morals, to get us there as well. All they're interested is in money, and they will wave the money in front of them, and this is what we will get.
Yeah, if you sign that agreement, and I gather that the Caribbean Court of Justice is your final court of appeal. Well, the Caribbean Court of Justice, I would go so far as to say that it is a great sympathizer of the LGBT political ideology. Okay, this Caribbean Court, the president, I think, described the court as an executing agency for donor funds for UN Women. Now, UN Women is one of the most rabid LGBTQ and feminist ideological organizations in the world. I don't know why the UN has a UN Woman, apart from to push these radical ideologies. It should have a UN family. You know, you would think a clear thinking or institution would have UN family that looks after man, his wife, and their children. No, they have UN women, and UN women come straight out of gender ideology and so on in the universities, which is it's really very rabid LGBTQ and feminist ideology. That's what the UN is UN and UN women are about. So why the Caribbean Court of Justice should be taking money from that agency? It shows that it's compromised. It's a thoroughly compromised court. And the thing about it, the Privy Council, the judges in the Privy Council, while they do have an ideological sympathy for the LGBT ideology, they at least, in the recent past at least, in the rulings they have made sure they stayed within the law instead of advancing their political ideology. And let me just say straight up that we had a case on our Buggery law in Jamaica, and our judges, let me commend them, they did the same. They, in their judgments, two of them indicated that they are big sympathizers to the illogic of the LGBT ideology. Well, they're entitled to that, but at least they knew that their role is to adjudicate the law, and they stayed within that role and ruled correctly. We have seen in the Caribbean where judges are not adjudicating law, but they're making law. Okay, in the Belize situation, the judge in that case actually made changes to the Belizean constitution in order to to remove the Belizean buggery law. That is the commitment of some of our judges, and we call those judges activist judges. I am wary, and we, like in the Jamaica Coalition and other people in Jamaica, we are wary of the activism of the Caribbean Court of Justice. We see that type of activism in other courts in the Caribbean, but we are really wary of the Caribbean Court of Justice, because if it becomes our final court of appeal, we will be locked into a court that seems to be, well, if you an executing agency for donor funds from UN Women, what type of rulings are you going to be making? And why should we bind ourselves to a court that has that particular perspective? You follow?
That is why I'm so happy that Jamaica has stayed clear from the Caribbean Court of Justice. All they try to do to entice Jamaica to join this court, Jamaica has wisely said no. Because, mind you, I was one of the people in support of the CCJ when it first started, when they were talking about it. However, I have seen their work, and their work leaves me in shock and disappointment. I cannot support them. I do not support them. I think that they have betrayed their oath when they set about to do this nonsense. You can, and first of all, why are they seeking funding from anybody else when the people who actually sat down and formed the court, who actually prepared the ground for the court, said and they ruled that the court should be funded by a trust fund subscribed to by the governments of the countries that are in the court, and that they will not be able to be influenced by money. That they put money there in a fund, and this fund was supposed to be a fund that they can invest to make more money rather than have to rely on anybody for their funding. The Caribbean Court of Justice has betrayed its origins by getting money from anybody, and that's the problem. So we see now, even the court has sold its soul. We got to be very careful, because if we have a court that is willing to be purchased, well, the governments in this country can do anything, because the courts will find a way to justify their behavior, and that is what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. Let me just say that I personally would like a Caribbean Court of Justice. I think that is it's something that I, as a Caribbean person, would like. I don't want this Caribbean Court of Justice, and because courts have a philosophical approach that they itemize as to their conduct and their modus operandi. And one of the items in the Caribbean Court of Justice is really a statement that says that the whole LGBTQ concept is something that the court basically embraces, and people who don't embrace this cannot sit on that court. Now, I have to be careful because I don't have the exact quote, but I would like you to search it out, because there is a statement, that a preamble to the why of the court, why the court is here, and it references those sort of things. And basically, like I said, persons who hold views that are contrary to supporting the LGBTQ can't really sit on that court. So you see what the court is. You see what the focus of the court. This is why I said I am all for a Caribbean Court of Justice, but not as it is at the moment. Its preamble it's objective. The why of the court has to change. And also, why should it be, executed agency for donor funds for UN Women, this LGBT organization? So we are going to resist having the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal until and unless we can get those sort of changes. There's no reason why we should have a court that is basically going to be ruling on LGBT and imposing that on our societies. Why should we have that as our final court of appeal? We don't see any good reason to have such a court.
No, they're legislating for these countries. They're actually legislating. I said that in the Senate, and the president of the Senate, tell me I know what I'm talking about, and I say nobody can say so because you you burn the lawyer for one of these cases that I'm criticizing. So don't jump in here for me because they ruled in your favor, and he didn't bother me anymore because I had my facts with him too. The courts are legislating. I even wrote to them in a case, and they're arrogant as well. They did some arithmetic, and they multiplied 2 by 2 and get 3. And I wrote to them, I said, but the math's wrong. They didn't even look back at me. But the man got a smaller award because they're so arrogant. They're self-important. They do not want to acknowledge any underlings like me, even when they are wrong. And the thing is, this is only science, this is maths. You put in calculator, you work with a pencil and paper, you can still get the answer. But they didn't get the answer. When you tell them, they fob you off. They don't even want to fix their own mistakes. I have a problem with them. So you say you don't have a problem. I'm like you. I would like to see a Caribbean court, but not this one. This one has proven to me that it should be abolished.
Yeah. Start from scratch. Start from scratch.
Well,
change the philosophical approach and make it one that is rooted in sense. Because, as I said, the LGBT agenda is rooted in passion and desire. It's not based in sense.
Perversion.
Perversion. We are going to listen. This has been going on for so. I thought it would have been shorter, but it's so interesting, and there's just so much information that you're giving to us, Dr. West, and we are so grateful to you. And I want to say to Jamaica, don't forget about Barbados. We are your sister country. And whenever I know I'm going to be calling on you because now they have ruled against Praise Academy, and we believe that we should not leave it there. And I'm sure I'm going to be giving you a call tomorrow. I'll be bothering you all because we need energy, we need strength over here, and we're not getting it from our leaders. We're not getting it from organizations that's supposed to be assisting us. We're not getting that from them, not at all. So I'm going to be calling on you. But here's somebody asking you a question, and this is the last question for you because we're going to have to run to something else. It says, what is our move now, seeing there's no opposition in Parliament, so that we are now bound to this agreement? What do you suggest? I know you don't live in Barbados, but you're a Caribbean man. You're a Trini living in Jamaica. And we need your help, man. You guys strong over there, so talk to us.
Well, we had been with talks with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 27 months about this thing, and we weren't getting what we consider to be traction. We spoke with our church leaders, and they spoke with the Prime Minister. Again, we weren't getting any traction. So when we saw that it was coming up to sign, we decided we were going to take to the streets. We're going to protest. And then we sent out things on social media and told people to send statements. We send the email address of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so on, and tell people, bombard the ministry and said, do not sign this thing. We're not sure why the government did not sign this. They suddenly say there are things that they need to consider. But two things. They knew that our churches were involved because the umbrella group, which is the heads of the 7 divisions of the 7 divisions of the church, spoke to the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister knew that. They also knew that we had a pretty big march, bigger than any political march in 2014 and 2015 in halfway trade. So I will put it maybe that when they heard maybe that we were going to protest, we were taken to the street, they decided to change. I'm not sure, but that's my feeling. What am I saying here? I'm saying there comes a time when you got to take to the street. You have to say to the government, don't sign this, otherwise you'll pay the consequence. But you have to be willing to make the government pay the consequence if they sign it. And if there isn't that enthusiasm to stand for righteousness, then you may not have something. But like I said, we were going to protest. We told people to bombard the ministry using their WhatsApp and their email, said, do not sign this. So now that they've signed it, they should say that, the people have to say, we do not support this. It's late, but at least let the government know that you don't support it through either protests or some sort of social media campaign.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, it comes to that.
Yes. Somebody's asking, can we go to the UN and can we go to the UN and present our case as a people to get out of this agreement?
Well, first of all, this is not a UN agreement. It's an EU, European Union agreement. I know your government has signed it. The issue is with the government. The issue you have is with the government. You have to let the government know that you need to protect your children from and the future of the country from this agreement, and you have to find some way to do that.
Marcia, that question again says to the people of Barbados, we want somebody else to do it for us. We must be willing to stand up and do it for ourselves. We don't want the UN. We don't want anybody. We want the voters of Barbados to say to the government of Barbados, oh, you did here? Well, you don't get my vote again. That is what the people must do. And let them know, come on the streets, march peacefully. I ain't want nobody breaking on nobody walls and scratching the cars to do anything. I just want you to come out there and let the government see you. When the government see you and your numbers on the street, they have second thoughts. No UN, nobody else. You are Barbadians. You have the power to fix these things on your own. And if you don't want to do that, you will suffer the consequences. You suffer the consequences of this government already, and you refusing to stand up, hoping that there's going to be some divine intervention or somebody from outside can come and do it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to stand up. You hear Dr. Benz talking about that big march in Jamaica, the march that they proposed, and government start back because, and then again, the church people. Jamaica is still a Christian society, and a lot of people, even though they might not go to church, identify themselves as Christians. And if you start doing something that you be seeing as unchristian, and the churches speak up against it, their members are not going to vote for you. So you need, because the members of the churches vote too, So that is what you have to do. The churches must be involved. The people got to stand up for themselves. If you don't stand up for yourself, you are willing to be a slave in Barbados hereafter. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well said, Mr. Franklin. Well said. And with that, we just want to thank Dr. West for spending this time with us. And as I said, I'm going to, the worst thing is for me to have your number. I'm going to call you with questions and to see what can be done. And please keep us in your prayers. We want the people to rise up, and we have to keep pushing. Thank you so much, sir. God bless you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.